Welcome to our weekly Forex forecast, and this is for the week of August 19th to the 23rd, 2019. Just a quick disclaimer here before we get started. This is for educational purposes only. Trading is a risky business, so please be careful with your money. As usual, we'll get started with our calendar here. Okay, so in terms of what's going on in the market, just before we dive into our news that's coming up, last week, a couple of developments that we saw. First one was that President Trump, or there was a message from the U.S. saying that they were going to scale back on some of the tariffs, and they were not going to. There was some stuff where the tariffs would be delayed till December. So that was one. And then there was also the development that US and China will be holding trade talks in September. So all of that has given the equity markets some lift. So we saw the stock markets go up, and we saw Japanese yen crosses go up at the same time. Other than that, there were comments out of New Zealand where the central bank is willing to cut rates, or they're willing to cut rates further and provide all the monetary support that is required. So that was another one where we saw New Zealand dollar drop as a result of that, and the numbers came in negative for that as well. So let's look at what's coming up for this week here. So starting the week off here, we have CPI numbers here for the Eurozone. So the yearly CPI numbers, these are very important. Last week, we saw that the Euro, the ECB, is happy or willing to provide monetary policy stimulus to Euro. And if the CPI numbers come out negative, that will have a negative impact on the Euro, because it will put more pressure on the central bank, ECB, to cut, either to cut rates or to actually provide more stimulus. So that's one here. This is an important numbers that central bankers watch. And then we have monetary policy meeting minutes for Australia. Again, Reserve Bank of Australia has been very open to providing monetary policy stimulus here. So that's another thing to keep an eye out for. And then on a Tuesday, so out of these comments, if the comments point out that they are likely to provide more stimulus, it will be negative for Australian dollar. And then after that, we have on Wednesday here, on Tuesday here, we do have an FOMC member speaking here. These comments can be very important because these comments lead to market expectations. So if we keep hearing comments that suggest that the Fed is likely to cut rates, then it will be negative for the US dollar. On Wednesday here, we have CPI numbers here for Canada here. So these CPI numbers, like I said, are again very important numbers, one of the numbers that central banks pay attention to. Now, Bank of Canada hasn't said anything about cutting rates at this point, whereas the Fed has started cutting rates. Usually we see that Bank of Canada is slightly behind the Fed. So now that the Fed has started cutting rates, if they continue on with interest rate cuts, then Bank of Canada is not far behind, especially if the numbers come out below expectations. So this is an important number to pay attention to. If it drops below expectations here, we are likely to see Canadian dollar drop as well. All right, so Wednesday here, very, very important here. We have FOMC meeting minutes here. At this point, not really expecting any interest rate cuts. This one is just the meeting minutes here. Usually, if there are rate cuts and such, they usually do it at the meetings where there is a press conference after. At this point here, the focus will be more on what the Fed has to say about the upcoming monetary policies. So they have been kind of going back and forth in terms of how they are viewing the markets. So they were concerned, the Fed was concerned about US-China trade relations kind of falling, or the talks falling apart. But now that US and China are talking again, or will be talking in September here, so the Fed has been kind of waiting to see how things play out. But there is more pressure on Fed to continue cutting rates. So if the meeting minutes point to any of the further easing of monetary policy, that will actually be negative for the US dollar. So this one is important one to pay attention to. And then on Thursday here, we have PMI numbers out of the Eurozone. So again, very important numbers. These are precursors to our retail sales as well as the GDP numbers here. So if the PMI numbers come out negative or below expectations here, we are likely to see Euro drop. And then we also have ECB monetary policy meeting accounts. So this is similar to FOMC meeting minutes, even though this is not marked in red. This is very important. So we have to pay attention to this. ECB has said previously that they are willing to provide monetary policy support. And this is where they have been criticized by President Trump for trying to influence the currency. So if we hear similar language from, or we get similar language from these meeting minutes, we are likely to see Euro drop as a result. So very important to keep an eye on this. Also last week, there was a report that came out that said that Germany was willing to go in deficit in the budget in order to support the markets or the Eurozone. So that will be very important here. And then we have a Jackson Hole Symposium. Again, anytime when there are a lot of leaders together in one place, there tend to be comments. There tend to be comments that are, the journalist will be there as well. So there tend to be a lot of comments that come out in different publications. So it's important to pay attention to that, because any comments can move the market, especially right now. Liquidity is really low here in month of August, and we have seen things have gotten tossed around just based on comments. So just very important for us to pay attention to these. New Zealand dollar here, retail sales numbers for the quarter. We saw negative numbers come out for New Zealand last week, and there was a negative impact from that. So if we see the retail sales numbers drop here, we are likely to see a drop in New Zealand dollar here as well. And then we have core retail sales numbers here. For Canada, like I said before, if the numbers are actually dropping, it will be negative for the Canadian dollar. On a Friday here, first thing in the morning, we have Fed Chair Powell speaking. So his speech will be very important, because all eyes are currently on the Fed to see how they are going to manage the monetary policy and if they're going to provide support. And then it's also Jackson Hole Symposium. So expect comments out of the meeting there. So very, very important for us to pay attention to these. So we still have another couple of weeks in August, and market liquidity is very, very low. Things are getting tossed around, like I said before. So we need to be very careful with all of this. All right, let's go on to the charts here. We'll start off by taking a look at euro dollar. So last week we saw euro was into resistance here. It dropped, and this week we have a bearish engulfing candle close here. So bias is bearish. Overall price is making a lower high. So bias is bearish here. In terms of our what to expect here, we're likely to see a drop here. My bias is to the downside. Now we could get a further move up, just a pullback here, and then drop. So basically, I'm looking for price to drop further. First target will be 1.1020 level here, or 30, sorry. So 1.1030. If price does not break through this level, then it can go back up. But if it does break through, then I'm looking for it to drop further towards 1.09 level. So bias here is bearish for our euro dollar. Pound dollar here, this one is interesting. We did see price push up higher here. We are getting into some important support that we haven't seen for some time here. So market did push up. Now there are comments that are coming, or developments coming out of the Brexit situation here. So I was looking at a story that said that they're going to restrict the movement of EU citizens as soon as no Brexit, if there's a no Brexit deal here, or no deal Brexit, I should say. So this is not good. So if we see negative stories or negative developments come out of Brexit preparations, that will be negative for British pound. Even though we have seen this one push up, it is not looking hugely bullish. So bias is still bearish. However, it could move up higher. So we have to be prepared for that. So we could see price go up higher into 1.2280. So be prepared for that. It could go all the way into these previous levels, or it could just drop from here. So right now I'm viewing this as a pullback here for a further move to the downside. There is all this room to the downside where price could still drop. But last time when we saw the price drop here, it pulled back quite quickly right away and then moved up. So just be prepared, because we are getting into these important support levels that we haven't seen for a while. We could see price actually buying coming into the British pound. But overall, my bias is still to the downside. But like I said, be prepared for a further pullback into 1.2280 potentially. But I'm looking for a drop after that, not looking for this to be hugely bullish, just for the short period of time, and then looking for a further drop. First target will be the bottom of these candles here at 1.20, and then there's this room to the downside, so towards 1.1470. But this one could take a while. So for now, just looking for a bit of a pullback and drop. 1.20 will be the target for pound dollar. Aussie here. Aussie has been interesting. We saw the drop and then price had pulled back. And this week, it's still staying here. It's holding below this previous support resistance level. We are into these important support levels on this one here as well. So overall here, bias is bearish. For this week here, this is neutral. So this one could go in either direction. So what I would look for is to see if price will drop through here, and then a continuation to the downside here. So my bias overall is neutral to bearish here, and we could see a further drop towards 0.6680. So neutral to bearish for Aussie dollar. Now, should price break through the high here, we are likely to see it go all the way into 0.6920. So if we see that the stock market is doing quite well, this one could get pulled up with the stock market just from the sentiment perspective. But for now, this one is holding below the support resistance level. Hence, I'm looking for a further move to the downside. New Zealand dollar, this one, we saw that the central bank, Reserve Bank of New Zealand here was willing to support even negative interest rate, or they're considering doing negative interest rates. And this is a big step for Reserve Bank of New Zealand, because we haven't really, they haven't dropped rates in a long time here. So, and then they suddenly dropped a half a point, and now they are commenting about considering negative rates. So that's quite big. And as a result, we saw New Zealand dollar drop here. And the data came out negative as well. So if we see more negative data come out, we're likely to see New Zealand dollar drop. But again, if the stock market continues to go higher, this one could turn around as well. But for now, bias is bearish, and the target is 0.6380. for New Zealand dollar. So bias is bearish. And let's see for next target here. This one's fairly close, so we could go a little bit lower here. 6300. So first target is 6380, then 0.6300. Dollar CAD here, this one is interesting. We are seeing that price is holding in this range for the last couple of weeks here. We do have a bullish candle close, but there's also a pin on the top, which makes it a little bit of a neutral, or gives it a neutral bias. So what I would look for is a move higher here into 1.3340, and if it doesn't go higher, we are likely to see price drop here. So even though there is bullishness here, it is not enough there isn't enough bullishness for it to really power through. The momentum seems to be lacking. So as a result of that, my bias is bullish to neutral. I think this one could get stuck sideways here in that range. So I would keep an eye on this range between 1.3340 and 1.3180. And I'm looking for price to just go sideways here for dollar CAD. Euro pound here, this one is interesting. We saw euro drop here. For British pound, there were some positive data points that came out. As a result, we saw British pound actually go up, and euro had dropped. So this is why euro pound has dropped. So now we are into this support resistance level here. Price was right into this resistance, and now we are into this support resistance level here. So with this one here, for now, bias is bearish, and we could get a pullback towards 0.9185 level. But this one as well could go sideways here, because neither euro nor British pound really has anything that is supporting them. Recently, positive numbers have supported British pound, so we'll have to see. Bias is bearish, so a couple things that could happen here. Two scenarios I would look for. One would be a pullback into 0.9195, so let's say 0.9200, and then a further drop here. The concern here will be the support resistance level. If price does not break below this 0.9100, if it doesn't hold below, then chances are it's going back like this, right? So we could see that type of a scenario. So watch out for that. But if it does break below this level here, then I'm looking for price to continue into 0.8980. So for now, bias is bearish for euro pound. Euro Swiss franc, this one is bearish as well. We are into support right where at the current levels here, but bias is bearish. Watch out for this. See how price went sideways here. We could see similar price move here as well, but bias is bearish. And in terms of a pullback level, we could get a pullback into 1.0880 level, and then a further drop here. So bias is bearish, looking for price to drop further into this previous support resistance level here at 1.0880. So bearish, so 1.0780. Bias is bearish for Euro Swiss franc. Pound Swiss franc, this one has pulled back, but now we are into the support resistance level, support turning into resistance here. So at this point, this one does look bullish. However, I would be very careful with this level here at 1.1950. Sorry, excuse me. If price does not go through that level, then again, this one could also go sideways here. Okay, so this one could go sideways here and then drop further. Overall bias is to the downside. However, because it has dropped so much, there is room for this one to pull back up further, and we could see a further pullback here towards 1.2100. So again, with this one, I would just be careful and I would keep an eye on those levels. So at this point, I am looking for it to go sideways. So my bias is neutral here. But if it breaks the high, then I'm looking for 0.2100 as the next target. And this is where we could see price turnaround. But for now, bias is neutral for pound Swiss franc. Dollar Swiss franc here, this one pulled back as well. Again, this one is also into the support resistance level and it could go sideways, but we do have a bullish candle close. And the next target here would be 0.9850, the top of this candle. And if it breaks this candle, it could go all the way into the high of this previous range that it was trading in. But at this point, I'm more inclined to think that with this one here as well, price could go sideways like this and not really go higher. So I'm looking for a sideways move, so slightly bullish to neutral here. So I'm looking for basically 0.9850, and then I'll see if it goes sideways. But if it breaks through, then we have that room open to the upside. But for now, I think we may see it just go sideways here. So slightly bullish for dollar Swiss franc. Pound yen, this one as well with a British pound getting a bit of momentum to the upside here. We have seen pound crosses pull back. So this one looks bullish right now, but again, I am seeing this one as more as a pullback as opposed to a full-on bullish move here. However, because we have seen such a big move to the downside, the pullback could go higher into a 132.20 level here. So I would watch out for the high of this candle here, which is 130.20. So if price goes through the high, then I'm looking for price to go up to the next level here, which is 132.20, and from there this one could drop. So for now, slightly bullish, but if it doesn't go through, then we're likely to see price come back down again. The Brexit developments will be very important for the British pound. Like I said, the story about a restriction of movement for EU citizens, that's not a good one. We are likely to see negative response with British pound if we see more of those kind of stories come out. So very important to pay attention to Brexit developments. But for now, I'm looking for a bit of a move higher into 130.20. If it goes through into 130.25 or 20, but it could also go sideways right over here. So keep an eye on that. Euro yen, this one is interesting. We saw price pull back all the way almost into the high of last week, but now we have a bearish candle close here, a bearish pin bar. So looking for price to drop further. We could get a pullback into 118.80 level and then a drop. So keep an eye on that, but bias is bearish. First target is 117, then 116.20. So bearish bias here for Euro yen. Dollar yen, this one has also pulled back, but like we see, this is also into support resistance here. My bias here is neutral. I'm not seeing this as a huge bullish move at this point. It could just go sideways here. Now, the thing is, though, if there is positive sentiment with the equity markets, then yen crosses will go higher just from that, because any positive sentiment in the stock market has a positive impact on yen crosses. So keep an eye on that. But for now, bias is neutral for dollar yen. I'm looking for it to basically go into the high here at 107.14 level and then come back down towards the bottom, 105.20. 105. So neutral bias for dollar yen. Aussie yen, this one as well, we saw price go up here, but this one is also neutral. This one, the candle itself is neutral here with pins on both sides. That's a neutral candle. So basically, I'm looking for price to trade. We could see a retest of 72.80, but then it could drop here back as well towards 70.70. So bias is neutral. I'm not looking for a big move higher in this Aussie yen. New Zealand yen, this one is also neutral, completely neutral candle close here, small candle body, pins on both sides. This is neutral. So I'm looking for a price to basically trade between the high and the low of last week, which is 69.20 and 67.50. And if it breaks the low here towards 66.80, but bias is neutral for New Zealand yen. CAD yen, this one as well. As we can see, price hasn't really done much. It's just traded back and forth between previous week's highs and lows. And I'm expecting the price to do the same for this week as well. A lot of people are away this week with it being August, and everybody tends to come back in September. So trading or the markets tend to get better towards the second week of September, but till then, especially in August here, last couple of weeks of August, liquidity tends to stay low, and we can see crazy price moves, but I'm not really expecting a huge amount of movement in this, so neutral bias for CAD yen as well. All right, so now let's take a look at our commodities here. So we have this is silver here. So silver bias is neutral here. We see that price had moved higher. And so price had moved higher, but it's stuck here between the highs here and this previous highs. So overall, price is holding above this previous support resistance level. So I'm looking for a sideways move here. It does have this bullishness in it, but again, not looking for a huge bullish move, just looking more for neutral bias here, price to stay in this range for now between 17.50 and 16.50. And if it breaks either side, then I would look for the next targets. Next target to the upside here would be the next level that here at 18.20. And if it breaks down to the downside, then I would aim for 15 or 16 level here. But till then, I'm looking for a sideways move. Gold here, gold is still maintaining this bullishness here. As we can see, price moved higher. However, the candle close here is still neutral with this one as well. With the back and forth with the US and China, we have seen that markets have been going back and forth. So any negative news about US-China trade talks tends to send the equity markets lower, which has an impact on gold, silver, and yen crosses, as well as Swiss franc crosses. But right now, we may just be in this a bit of a sideways move because US and China are scheduled to talk in September. However, they are not quite there yet. So we have a little bit of time prior to that. So we could see a bit of a market lull as a result of that. So sideways here and looking for price to basically trade between 1535 and 1482 here for gold as well. Oil has been pushed around as well based on the comments that we are seeing between US and China here. So in this case, overall price is biased a bit to the downside here. So we have a pin bar, but it's holding above the support at 53.50. So as long as price stays above that, then this one could also trade sideways. So this one has been trading in this kind of around this price point for 3-4 weeks here. It has gone up and down, but for the most part, it is sideways. But this big pin on the top suggests that we could see a drop. So in this case, I would look for a bit of a pullback towards 56 and then a drop towards 53.50. If it breaches that level, then I'm looking for a further move to the downside at towards 56.50. For now, though, bias is slightly to the downside for oil. Copper, similar move here. We saw a move up higher, a pullback into 2.60, slightly higher here. We have a bearish candle close here. This is a pin. So I'm looking for price to drop here. And in this case, I will look for a move towards the support here at 2.49 level and potentially slightly lower towards the bottom of these candles as well, 2.46. So bias is to the downside for copper. For Bitcoin, I don't have the current numbers here, but it looks like price is still trading sideways. We did see a drop, but then price came into the support and held there. So bias is sideways. So if you look at the bigger time frame here from weekly perspective, we see that price is stuck in this range. So I'm expecting the price to stay in this range for the time being. But please do check the latest numbers for Bitcoin here. My chart won't get updated till this evening. S&P 500 weekly here, we see that price is in a bit of a range here. We saw a drop here, and then price has pulled back since then. And this is where we are currently. So if we go to our daily, this is the range that price has been trading in right now. So we could see a move higher towards 29.50 here, and then potentially back down here. So keep an eye on it. Right now, my bias is neutral on the stock market, especially with people being away. I think we could get stuck in this a bit of a range here. So neutral bias for S&P 500, looking for price to trade between 29.50 and 28.20 or potentially 27.80. But somewhere in here is what I'm looking for. We could go slightly higher though. So watch out for this move towards 29.50. Same thing for NASDAQ as well. If we look at the daily here, we see that price has just been stuck in this range for the last couple of weeks. So at this point, I would look for a move higher towards 77.50-ish level and then potentially back down here. So bias is neutral for this and looking for a move between 77.50 and 73.80 or potentially into 72.20, but maybe in this area here. So my bias here is neutral for NASDAQ as well. With DAX here, this one, we have seen a drop and then price is pulling back. So I think this one could also go neutral here. We could get another pullback or a move higher into 11,600 here, back into this level here. So again, neutral for this one here as well. So I'm looking for a bit of a pullback into 11,600. If price stays below that level, then we could get another drop and it could just consolidate here. Or if it breaks above this level, then I'm looking for consolidation in this range here, but mostly neutral for now. Okay, and then we have Footsie has actually dropped here. So we saw this big drop. Now price is back into the support resistance. So this will be an interesting one to see how price reacts at this 71.30 level. If it goes through it, then I'm looking for price to go towards 72.20-ish area. And this one here as well, I'm not looking for a huge move up, but it could go all the way into here. So right now, like I said, liquidity is so low in the markets that stuff is getting pushed around quite a bit. So we tend to see exaggerated moves during this low liquidity period. So a move that would normally only go till this level could go all the way up to that level here during the low liquidity times. So for now, I am looking for a bit of a move higher here, potentially into 71.80, and then this one could go sideways from there like this. So neutral bias for basically all the equity markets. This one as well, we have a neutral candle close. We are into the support resistance level. So if price stays below 2,800, then we're likely to see price goes sideways. But overall, my bias is neutral pretty much for all the equity markets. So we'll have to wait and see what kind of sentiment-driven moves that we get. So keep an eye on tweets, keep an eye on comments from US and China, any new developments in the geopolitical arena. So that's what will drive the market for now. All right, so that's all I have. If you would like the Excel sheet that comes with it, you don't need to mark down the levels. I will already, or I have a spreadsheet that I do put the levels in. You can go to tradingwithvenus.com/forecast, and you will get the spreadsheet from there. So that's all for now. Guys, have a wonderful trading week, and I will see you again next week. Bye for now.